contrary to what many of you might think, or what stereotypes might lead us to think, software developers can be quite social. And a good example for that is the IT community in Linz. It's a vibrant community full of meetups and conferences where software developers meet to share their knowledge and experience. One of these meetups could look like this. And back when I first started my first job as a software developer, a former colleague of mine used to take me to those events. And he would always introduce me as Pia, one of the best female developers he knows. But when I look at that picture, I don't know if that's a compliment. There's not too many of us in the room. There's me, and if you look closely, there is another woman in this picture. And back then, that was very normal for me. This picture is the rule, it's not the exception. And it was just a fact for me. That was just how things were. But today I think a bit differently. Today I ask, do I have to be the only one in the room? Is it really necessary that it is that way? I asked ChatGPT for the top 10 dream jobs girls have and the top 10 dream jobs boys have. And that's the list that I got. And when I think back to the dreams that I wanted to, the dreams that I had when I was a little girl, most of them were on the left-hand side, actually all of them. I wanted to be a teacher, a veterinarian, even a fashion designer or interior designer were on my thoughts back then. But I ended up as a software developer. So how did that happen? I think there were a few things that influenced my path. The first thing was a lot of luck, because when it was time to decide on where to study, which university to go to, I teamed up with a colleague of mine, because we both wanted to visit the universities of applied sciences in Upper Austria. I wanted to visit the campus in Linz for medical engineering and applied social sciences. She wanted to visit the one in Hagenberg for informatics, communication, and media. We teamed up, we both visited both of them. And when I got to visit Hagenberg, I got to know about the things that you can study there. I got to know about software engineering, hardware and software design, and mobile computing. All of those things sounded super intimidating to me, super technical, super dry. But there was one subject that didn't sound as scary as the others. It was called bioinformatics. It was presented to me as a very good mixture of biology, genetics, and coding. Coding was absolutely new for me, but the biology part, I had that in school, I liked it, I was interested in it, so I was intrigued. And I just dared to try it. So I dared to be bold, and I tried to study bioinformatics. And that was one of the few things that made me choose this path. The first thing was a lot of luck. The second was a very supportive environment. And the third thing was this subject that was advertised in a way that was not as scary as all of the other technical subjects. And that's a part that I think we could work on a bit more today. It's already done better today than 10 years before, but computer science should be advertised in a way that is not intimidating, but that sparks curiosity, because it can be a lot of fun. I started to study bioinformatics, and when I started, we were actually 12 out of 12 women in a group of 25. That is a really good gender balance for a computer science subject. In software engineering, they had 3 women out of 60. In hardware software design, they were lucky if they had a single one in any year. But out of these 12 women, only 4 graduated. Only 4 did their bachelor's. I'm sure for many it was because they did not like the subject, it was not what they expected, but I can't help but wonder if it wasn't also the way that we teach coding to new people. Coding was new for me, and I would like to show you a bit how it was to get introduced to coding. There is a very popular first example in coding lessons. It's called FizzBuzz. I will quickly explain the rules. The grid of it is that you count upwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, to however much you like, and there are 2 special rules. The first is any number that is divisible by 3, you need to replace with fizz. The second rule is any number divisible by 5, you need to replace with buzz. So you would count like 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, buzz, etc. If you reach 15, which is divisible by 3 and 5, you need to say FISBUS. Sounds easy, right? And then you have to think about how to teach this to a computer. How can I make a computer program say these things? And I'll show you this program in the language that I learned first. It's C++. I'm not sure how many coders are in the room. For me, when I started, this was super intimidating because how should I read it? I'll try to break it down a bit. We'll ignore most of the stuff. Important is line 4. It says main. The main function in a program is where we start. So when we run a program, we actually execute the main function. Then there are a lot of these weird brackets. The curly brackets in line 4 and 18 are important. They contain what is inside the main function. So whenever I say inside, I mean inside of such curly brackets. Then in line number 5, we have a for loop. That's a loop where we just count upwards with int I equals 1. We say we start at 1. We count upwards as long as I is less than or equal 100. And the I++ defines the step size. It means we increment I by 1. So this for loop would be like 1, 2, 3, 4 until we reach 100, and then it would stop so that the program doesn't run indefinitely, forever. Then inside there is a if. A if is needed to make decisions based on conditions. A condition can be true or false. In these if lines, we have the checks for remainder on division. So is a number divisible by 3 and 5? We say FISBUS. Is it only divisible by 3? We say bus, etc. That's a lot only to get something like this, to get some numbers with languages, with words in between. So, I mean, for me, it was fun because I had a predisposition for it. I liked it. It felt a bit like riddle solving to me, but I can see why this might not spark a lot of joy for everyone. Also, it's kind of easy to make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, it can lead to some weird results, like you don't get this list, but you get weird errors that are not always very helpful. For example, here I get 2 errors in 2 different lines. They say line 17 and 18, and when I take a look at line 17 and 18, I see no issue because the underlying error is actually in line 12. But to actually get to that point, that you understand that and find that those errors can be super frustrating. So when I started coding, this was really frustrating, getting error messages that I don't know what they mean. What does it even mean? Expected unqualified ID. What is that supposed to mean? The actual error here, if anybody's interested, is that at the end of line 12, we need an opening curly bracket, similar to the end of line 10 or 8. Yeah. So I see why this does not spark joy for everyone. And also, it might be a lot to learn in the beginning. You need to learn the gist of coding, which is this algorithmic thinking, this breaking things down to steps that the computer can understand. But you also need to know about the syntax, about very weird characters. You need to know that casing matters, but maybe spaces do not matter, new lines do not matter. You have to think about a lot of things. And maybe we can break that down a bit. Maybe we can cut it down to focus on the important part of coding, to focus on the how do you solve a problem with code? How do you break it down into steps that the computer can execute? And I'm not the first person to think about that. There is actually a programming language that was invented for that purpose. The language is called Scratch. It's a block-based programming language mainly used to program games. And this is one of those games. In this game, we have a ballerina. We can move her with keystrokes. And we have a butterfly that just goes to random positions. And whenever we catch that butterfly, we increment the counter. And I don't know about you, but I think this output is a bit more fun than the list of numbers and FISBUSes before. And the code for it is actually very readable. So the good thing about a programming language like this, like a block-based programming language, is you do not have to type, which means you cannot make typing mistakes. And it actually reads like a story. the blocks here, when up arrow key is pressed, change y by -10. You might need to know a little bit about the coordinate system, but in general, it's rather easy to understand. The same for the code for the butterfly. When the green flag is clicked, that's basically the main function of Scratch, so that's when the program starts. We set a variable called butterflies to 0, and then we always make the butterfly go to a random position, let it wait until it's catched by the ballerina, increase our counter for the butterflies, and then it would start again, go to another random position. If you're not convinced that this is fun, I encourage you to try it, because it really is fun. You can just go to this website, scratch.mit.edu, and try it. And I think if maybe in the beginning of coding lessons we would try something like this, more people would understand that coding can be really fun, really creative, really engaging. It doesn't have to be dry. At some point it will be that, maybe, but in the beginning it can be so much fun. But I actually made it with our course of teaching as well. So I finished my studies and I started to work. And the last thing I want to tell you about is a day that changed my life quite a bit. It was a few years back. A female coworker of mine and I, the two of us, we were invited to Vienna to be part of a female-only hackathon. Both of us, we worked at a IT company. We were very used to working in male-only teams, where we are the only woman in the team. And then we were invited to this hackathon, and we got there, didn't really know what would expect us. And then there were 50 people in the room, 50 women, all ready to do a full day of coding. For those of you who don't know what hacking means, hackathon is a mixture of the word hacking and marathon. So you just get together and work on something, hack on some project for a day. Usually you meet in the morning, you find a group, you find an idea, and you develop that idea in that time frame. In our case, it was a day. And when we drove home that day, we both decided for ourselves, we need to have this more often. We need to have something similar like we had in Vienna, also in Linz. So we started a programming club for women. We started a club for women to meet, for women to code together, for women to have an easy entrance into these technical topics. You don't have to study it, you can just come by, try to learn it. And for women to have a safe space where they can ask questions, where they don't feel intimidated or judged if they have questions. And a space that makes me answer the question, do I have to be the only one in the room? With a definitely not.